She tasted the blood before she ever saw it. The sharp tang of metal and dust coated her tongue as a rough hand pressed her face into the dirt. Laughter echoed somewhere behind her, cruel and hollow. "Serve the man or starve in the dark." They'd repeated it so often it no longer sounded like words, just chains. Lynn had stopped begging weeks ago. Begging only made them grin wider. 3 years locked in that cellar had taught her silence was safer than hope. But tonight, the world above had split open. Her husband's boots thundered down the stairs, whiskey in one hand, belt in the other. "You still think you can run?" he hissed. She didn't answer. Her eyes fixed on the rusted scissors half hidden by a wooden crate. When he lunged for her, she moved first. One gasp, then silence. His body dropped hard, crushing the lantern at his feet. Fire caught on the straw, hungry and fast. She stumbled through the smoke, barefoot, choking, the flames roaring behind her as the house began to collapse. The desert night met her with a cold slap. Wind tore across the endless sands, and she ran until her legs forgot how to move. Hours blurred. Blood dried black against her palms under the moonlight. By dawn, she no longer knew if she was alive or some spirit wandering. Her dress clung in tatters, her body heavy, each breath a punishment. She followed the sound of water that wasn't there until a shape cut through the haze. A cabin. A man. At first, she thought it a trick of exhaustion, but she dragged herself forward until she collapsed at a flat stone. The man turned at the sound, tall, streaks of gray at his temples, eyes sharp as winter steel. Elias Boone had spent half a lifetime outrunning the shadows of who he used to be. His hand instinctively twitched toward the rifle at the door, but when he heard her whisper, broken and thin, "Don't stop. Please," he froze. For a long moment, neither breathed. Her hair was matted with blood, her face a map of grime and sorrow. She tried to crawl, not away from him, but from the fear still clinging to her. He stepped back slowly, voice low, steady. "Careful now. I ain't here to hurt you." Her hands shook violently, tears cutting paths through the dirt on her cheeks. "I just can't be touched. Not even by kindness." Something twisted deep inside Elias's chest. He had seen blood, seen death, but never this kind of broken. He knelt, still giving her space. "Let me help you." She shook her head, whispering, "You can't help what's already dead." The desert wind rose, scattering sand across the fading light as she struggled to stand, her breaths sharp and ragged, the kind that meant a body was giving up. "Where are you watching from?" "Tell us in the comments," she whispered again, more to herself than to him. "I can make it stop. I just need somewhere quiet." Quiet. That single word struck Elias harder than any bullet ever had. He had come to this desert chasing that very thing, silence. To disappear, to forget, to let the world pass him by. And now silence had arrived at his door, broken, bleeding, desperate. His eyes drifted toward the horizon. No riders yet, but the tracks she left told another story. Someone would come, he knew it. His choices narrowed to two. Let her die on the ground, or open his door and invite death inside. Then her eyes met his, pale green, hollow, yet alive enough to beg without words. Elias exhaled, heavy, then stepped aside. "Door's open," he said quietly. "Come in when you're ready." She looked at him, then at the earth, then back again. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Instead, she dragged herself forward, slow and trembling, until she crossed into the shadow of his cabin. Elias shut the door behind her, the echo thudding like a promise neither of them could name. Outside, the wind dropped, the desert stilled, and somewhere far off a lone coyote howled. He wondered then, had he let in a dying woman, or the ghosts he thought he'd buried? The cabin smelled of smoke and dry wood. Elias lit the stove, set water to boil, keeping his eyes away from her. She sat near the door, too weak to rise, staring at the floor as if it were the only thing left she could trust. When he laid a blanket within her reach, she flinched. He didn't push, just placed it down gently. "For the cold. You don't have to take it." Her hands shook, but she reached anyway. "Thank you." 2 words, fragile but alive. He nodded and returned to his chair by the window. Outside, the desert stretched endlessly, a silent ocean of dust. He poured 2 cups of water, slid one toward her. She didn't drink, only stared at the steam as if it reminded her of something long gone. When her voice finally broke the silence, it came rough, jagged. "Do you believe in hell?" Elias's eyes lifted. "I've been there a few times." That answer pulled the faintest smile from her lips. "I didn't mean the kind in the Bible," she said softly. "I meant the kind a man builds for you." "One lock at a time." He said nothing. She wrapped the blanket tighter around her shoulders, trembling. "I killed him." "My husband. It wasn't supposed to happen, but it did." Her eyes shimmered in the firelight. "He kept me in a cellar for 3 years. Said he was teaching me obedience. He made me forget who I was." Her breath hitched. "I stopped begging after the first year." Begging made him laugh. "I prayed instead." But God stopped listening too. Elias watched the fire, letting her words hang heavy. He didn't offer forgiveness, didn't tell her it was fine. He just listened. Her voice cracked again. "That last night he told me I wasn't even worth hitting anymore. I remember seeing those scissors, and then nothing but fire." She exhaled slowly, as though each word scraped poison from her chest. "Guess I'm not welcome anywhere now." Elias stood, took down a tin of whiskey, and poured a small measure into her cup. "Drink, it'll steady you." She hesitated, then swallowed. The burn made her cough, but she didn't stop. "You did what you had to," Elias said at last. "That doesn't make you evil." She looked at him then, like she wanted to believe, like no one had told her such words in years. The wind rose outside, brushing against the cabin walls. Her eyes began to close, heavy with exhaustion. "If they find me," she whispered, "they'll kill me." Elias met her gaze, steady, unflinching. "Then we best make sure they don't." Her lips parted, fear flickering again. "You mean they're already close?" He didn't answer. His jaw tightened as he stared through the window. In the distance, something moved, bending the night. The lamp inside burned low, its light sketching the deep lines of his face. Dust rose against the horizon, faint at first, then undeniable. Elias narrowed his eyes. 3 riders moving slow, steady, the kind that didn't pass by, the kind that came looking. Inside, Sadie slept with the blanket tucked up to her chin. Her face softened, calm for the first time since she'd stumbled into his life. He thought about waking her, then let her rest. Instead, he pulled the rifle into his hands, the slide of metal quiet but final, a sound that drew a line no one could cross back from. Minutes later, the cabin shook under the rhythm of hooves. A voice cut the still air. "Boone, we know she's in there! Hand her over, and we'll be gone." Elias stepped outside, door opening slow, his hand easy on his belt. The 3 men before him looked like the ghosts of a past he once rode with. 3 horses, 3 guns, 3 sets of dead eyes. His voice was calm, measured. "You boys rode a long way for a lie," the leader smirked. "Word is the girl slit her husband's throat. We're just here to do the law's work." Elias tilted his head. "I've seen the law's work. Never looked much like justice to me." The grin faltered. "You're hiding her, Boone," he shrugged. "Maybe. Maybe I'm just done with men who think they own others." The man spat in the dirt. "Then you're standing in our way." That's our story for tonight. Now I'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop it in the comments, I'm curious. Elias's tone dropped, low as thunder on the horizon. I've been in the way my whole life. No one saw who moved first. 3 shots shattered the silence, sharp and final. When the smoke drifted off into the wind, only 1 man was left standing. Elias, still as stone, chest rising slow, eyes cold but steady. Behind him, the door creaked. Sadie stood there, hands trembling, eyes wide. "You killed them." He nodded once. "Yeah. Guess old habits die harder than I thought." Her tears weren't from fear. She stepped closer, halting just a few feet away. "They would have taken me back." Elias looked toward the horizon, his voice steady. "No one's taking you anywhere now." The words settled over her, heavy but kind. She swallowed hard. "Why are you helping me?" He turned, meeting her gaze without flinching. "Because someone should have, a long time ago." The cabin fell into silence again, but it wasn't the hollow kind anymore. It felt like air after drowning, the kind of silence that healed. Outside, the sky stretched silver. Morning was crawling in, and for the first time in years, Elias Boone didn't feel like running. He poured 2 cups of coffee, slid one toward her, and let a ghost of a smile break across his face. "Drink up. You're going to need it. The hard part's not over yet. If you've stayed this far, thank you for riding through the story with us. Pour yourself a cup of tea or coffee. Tell me what time it is where you are and where you're listening from. And if you want to hear what happens next on this quiet ranch, hit that subscribe button, partner. You won't want to miss what's coming." The sun climbed slow, painting the desert gold. Elias stood in the doorway, eyes on 3 fresh mounds behind his cabin. He had buried men before, but never like this. Not with a prayer under his breath, not with someone watching from the window. Sadie sat wrapped in his old coat, hands cupped around the steam rising from her coffee. In the morning light, she looked smaller somehow, fragile, yet her eyes had changed. The wild fear was gone, replaced by something quieter, just tiredness, worn but steady. When Elias stepped inside, she whispered, "You didn't have to do it." He set his hat down on the table, dust scattering off the brim. "Maybe not," he said evenly. "But I wanted to." Her gaze lingered on him, as if she couldn't quite believe anyone would say such a thing for her. "You don't even know me." A faint smile pulled at his mouth. "Don't need to. I know what it's like to be chased by your own ghosts." Her lips trembled. "You ever stop running?" He poured more coffee into her cup, the warmth filling the space between them. "Not until today." They let the silence stretch, but this time it wasn't heavy. It was a kind of peace. Then Elias reached into his pocket, drew out a small cedar cross worn smooth by years of handling. He hung it on the wall above the rifle rack, then rested his Colt beneath it, hand steady as if laying something to rest. Sadie's eyes followed his every move. "That gun saved me. Maybe," he said quietly. "But some things ain't meant to be carried forever." Her hands curled tighter around the cup. "I don't have much to give back." He tilted his head, eyes soft. "Then give what's left." That evening, the desert sky burned red as the sun dipped low. Sadie stepped onto the porch, holding something small in her hands, a bundle of dried lavender she had found in his cupboard, tied with a thin string. She walked inside and hung it by his bed. "For what?" Elias asked, a half smile tugging at him. "For forgiveness," she whispered. "For both of us," he didn't answer. He didn't need to. The smell of lavender drifted through the cabin, clean and gentle, like a beginning disguised as something ordinary. Outside, coyotes cried into the dark. Inside, they sat still, and for the first time, silence felt like a choice. But later, as night deepened, Elias's eyes lifted once more toward the horizon. What he saw there pulled at him, a shadow of change coming closer. When morning came, it was soft and kind. The air carried the scent of coffee. Elias sat at the window, watching sunlight crawl across the floorboards. Behind him, Sadie hummed a low tune as she baked bread on the stove, her voice faint but alive. The cabin, after years of emptiness, breathed again. Not laughter, not yet, but close. His eyes drifted to the rifle beneath the cedar cross, and beside it the lavender she had hung, still filling the air with that quiet promise of peace. They never spoke of the fire. Not once. Yet when the wind came from the south, Elias could still catch the scent of smoke, of damp cellar walls, of the men buried just over the hill. Sadie never mentioned it either, but she didn't need to. Every morning they woke up in that small cabin together was its own kind of forgiveness. Sometimes she sat on the porch at dawn, watching the desert spill into gold. Elias would bring her a cup of coffee, stand beside her, and say nothing. Silence had become their language. Kindness, their way of speaking. Years later, whispers spread through nearby towns. They told of a quiet ranch where a woman with gentle eyes lived with an old cowboy who no longer carried a gun. Folks said no one really knew how they had come together. But everyone who stopped there left with a full belly and a heart eased by something they couldn't name. One evening, with the light falling soft across the floorboards, Elias told her, "We don't get to choose what breaks us, but we sure as hell get to choose what we build after." She smiled then, steady and bright. "And what did we build, Elias?" He looked toward the horizon, his voice low, certain. "Something worth staying for." The wind moved through the grass in slow, easy waves. And just like that, the desert, once full of ghosts, finally rested. So now, as you sit here listening, maybe with a warm drink in your hand, let me ask you, if life gave you one more chance to start again, would you take it? And if you did, who would you build it with? If this story reached you even a little, give it a like and share it with someone who might need to hear it tonight. And if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe. There are more stories waiting for you here at the Quiet Ranch. Now tell me in the comments, what time is it where you are and where are you listening from? That's where we'll leave it for now. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this, go ahead and hit subscribe. There's plenty more waiting for you.